Hello to Pioneer viewers. As you know, our agenda is the Russia-Ukraine war, and while the war continues in full swing on the front line, other developments continue to occupy the agenda. There are many factors affecting the war processes as the parties continue their mutual attacks. One of the most critical needs in times of the war is human resources, and although the importance of manpower has been replaced by technology in modern times, the importance of the human resource continues. The states have the authority to recruit soldiers and declare mobilizations, and this authority gives them the legitimacy in practices to be carried out in the events of a possible war. Practice in military service is closely related to the policies of the political power, and the public support for military service depends on the politicians' understanding of governance. People react to the politicians who appease them, and they may not accept the economic and social hardship of the war. Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, many incidents have been on the agenda, and the Russian military's expectations were to end the war in a short time. And this has not been the case, and the war has been going on for more than 2 years. This is naturally reflected in the loss of soldiers on both sides, and as long as the war continues, soldiers from both sides will continue to lose their lives. From the very beginning, the Russian army's casualties have been huge, and it is very difficult to replace the ever-increasing numbers, and the Moscow administration has tried to fill the deficiencies caused by the loss of the soldiers and desertions with many moves, but at this point, it has not been successful, and the main factor in the Kremlin's failure was the lack of motivation. According to recent reports, the number of deserts in the Russian army has been increasing over time. In addition, there have been very important developments regarding the artillery shells needed by the Ukrainian army. Now, if you are ready, let's follow the latest developments together. As the Pioneer, we continue to report on Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so as not to miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. I also read all of your comments on our videos. Please continue to share your ideas about our content in the comments with us. Let's start if you are ready, because the Pioneer reports. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, there has been a huge increase in the Russian soldiers turning their backs on the armed forces, and the first few months of Vladimir Putin's full-scale invasion, there has been a massive exodus from Russia. Russian men who did not want to be conscripted urgently left Russia. Among those who stayed and went to Ukraine to fight, there is a mix of people from many different social backgrounds. Throughout the war, Russia's authorities toughened the country's criminal code to increase discipline in the armed forces, and the law was enforced even though Russia was not officially engaged in the war but was conducting a special military operation. In addition, measures are being harshly enforced in Russia even though martial law has not come into the force, and the mobilization announced by Putin in September 2022 is only partially defined. There has been a huge increase in the number of soldiers serving in the Russian army who wants to flee the war, and it is reported that the duty period of the personnel serving in the Russian army never ends. Many soldiers' families are complaining about the situation, and the Moscow administration, on the other hand, does not take any steps. The problem of the Russian soldiers, which emerged since the first days of the war, is still valid, and the Russian army, which collapsed after the Russian army forced prisoners, laborers, and minority groups to the front, is looking for motivation. In times of the war, it is necessary to develop feelings of unity and solidarity. While the number of deserters in the Russian army continues to increase, there has been a very important development for the Ukrainian army. The Ukrainian army, which needs a large number of bullets, will finally get what it needs. And critically, the important support comes at a time that the Ukrainian army will never forget. As the need for the new artillery shells is in support of Kiev's efforts to halt the advances of the Russian forces in the east of the country, around 1.5 million additional vital munitions will be aimed at holding back the Russians. The Czech Republic, one of the Ukraine's staunchest supporters, has identified about 700,000 new shells that could be funneled into Ukraine. In addition to the 800,000 rounds of artillery munition the Prague identified earlier this year. The ammunition has become an urgent need for Ukraine in its fights against the Russian invasion. Kiev fighters are thought to have fired a fifth of the ammunition available to the Russia's troops. And the Ukrainian officials and Western analysts have said Ukraine's operations are constrained by ammunition shortages as the Russian forces advance westwards. With the incoming reinforcements, the Ukrainian army's firepower will increase, and it will also have more potential to conduct strategic operations against the Russian army. NATO allies have scrambled to find ways to fire Kiev's artillery, but providing the shells, which are high on Ukraine's wish list, required an elaborate process. Procuring the necessities and delivering them was challenging, but earlier this month, sources reported that Moscow will soon produce 3 times more artillery ammunition than the United States and Europe could produce. What we are in now is a production war, and a senior NATO official told the network. The European Union has admitted it will deliver only half of the 1 million artillery shells it has pledged to send to Ukraine by this month. Earlier this week, the bloc said it would deliver about 500,000 shells to Ukraine by the end of March and 1 million by the end of the year. European countries supporting Ukraine have moved to accelerate military aid packages in lieu of guarantees on future support for the United States, Ukraine's largest single supplier of the military aid. With no end to the conflict in Ukraine in sight, more emphasis is being placed on European military power and production. Having allies to meet the needs of Ukraine's military could be an important asset. European countries should support Ukraine with their own security in mind. Other states are also concerned about their security due to Russia's stance towards Europe's. Increasing defense spending and the arms race shows us that the history is repeating itself. How do you evaluate the deserters in the Russian army? How do you think the military situation of the Russian army since the beginning of the war can be interpreted? What do you think are the most important differences between the two armies? And what do you think about the artillery shells needed by the Ukrainian army? How do you assess the support packages provided to the Ukrainian army by its allies? We value your opinion, so please share it with us.